What's good, everybody? My guest today is Tom Click. He's the Senior Vice President of Sales at Integrate, which is precision demand marketing to deliver better buyer experiences. Tom, welcome to the Goats of Growth.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Good to see you.
So tell me a little bit about Integrate and the role that you play there.
Sure. So Integrate is a marketing technology platform, right? So what we do is we help our customers primarily in B2B connect and orchestrate all of their top of funnel demand gen efforts, and then connect that data, ensure its compliance, and then send it downstream to marketing automation or CRM. So if you think about the way B2B marketers today need to generate demand to feed the sales monsters, that can come in, social, like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. It can come through content syndication providers. It can come through physical events or digital events. Each one of those methodologies, we call them channels. Each one of those channels creates process, sometimes manual, sometimes automated. Either way, it's typically disconnected. So Integrate has set out for the past 12 years or so to connect all of those disparate channels and sort of synthesize all of the data that's coming through into somebody's marketing automation system. And then the software does a lot of sort of compliance, data governance, and certainly reporting and analytics are a huge part of it. So yeah, we've been at it for a while now, and it's been great.
Let me ask you this. What's the benefit of synthesizing that information across the channels? What is the
good question. I mean, look, our main audience, right? Our main target is sort of the enterprise B2B marketer, right? So they're thinking about things globally. They're thinking about their specialties though, right? So you have the CMO and the VPs are thinking about big picture stuff, but then you have the individual directors or other VPs who are thinking, okay, I'm going to wake up and think about social. And I did figure out, how am I building my brand and demand on social networks, or how am I building my brand and demand through the media companies and things like that. So again, generating those very important audiences, because that's where their buyers are consuming content. So everybody has their sort of specialties, but they can create disparity. So I wake up and think about social, but I might be disconnected to the individuals waking up and think about webinars. Integrate where we sort of bring the benefit is saying, look, let's bring in the individuals that wake up and think about specific channels, connect them through a system, connect them through process, which sometimes we help the customer set, sometimes they set it for us, and then use technology and people to basically say, hey, look, here's how we're going to spend money, here's how we're going to track that, and then here's how we're going to get data from point A to point B.
Got it. Yep. That makes sense. And then you've been there pretty much since the genesis, right? You said over the last 12 years, and you've been there for 11 years, over 11 years.
Yeah.
Now SVP of sales. Tell me about that journey. I know when you and I talked initially, you said something to the effect of, you got there roughly customer one. Just walk me up that.
Yeah, definitely. I was fortunate enough to meet the VP now, who's still here, Jeremy Dempsey, and then the CEO, Jeremy Bloom, through my network. And they asked me to come on board once I saw the technology and said, like, okay, my background is in demand generation. And I was like, man, this software solves a lot of the challenges that we created in demand generation. So I was like, yeah, I'll come on board. It took some convincing, to leave a very phenomenal company in TechTarget and phenomenal leadership. Took some convincing in my personal life with my wife, I should say. And then, but once we made the leap, it was like, okay, how do we take this thing and my predecessor, Jeremy Dempsey, again, is still with us in massive role in the organization. How do we take what he's doing, which is, just sort of the theory and things like that. And he had a few customers, but like, how do we bring this to the enterprise? So I came in as an individual contributor, which I was super excited to do. So becoming a sales guy again. And then, we brought on a couple of customers. Of course, we were sort of figuring out that product market fit, figuring out our story, all of those things. And then a few clients, big ones, actually took a chance on us and, took a chance on me. We closed a couple big deals and the rest was sort of history. Yeah.
You were prior to there, you were a director of sales, senior director of sales at TechTarget, as you just alluded to. One thing that jumps out at me, and we talked about this before, is that over the last 20 plus years, these have been your two organizations, which I think is extremely unusual for sure. But you were director of sales, managed a bunch of people, and then you went to an individual contributor role. Tell me about why you made that decision. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So one of my mentors, probably the best word, Mike Catoya, was still the CEO of TechTarget. He always said to me, and he came to TechTarget as an individual contributor. Now he's the CEO, and he was the CEO on the path to be the CEO when I was there. But he always said, "Is that if you do it first, then when you lead people, they're going to see that you've been through that." So when I was asked to be an individual contributor, plus, if you've ever been a sales manager, you know the good ICs make way more money than you as a leader, right?
Right.
So anyway, I got that opportunity, and it's just look, especially when there's not a lot of product market fit yet. We were just sort of figuring out the story, figuring out how the tech would work. Figure if you get a couple under your belt, when you start to build on that and build people, not around me, but around the business. And I could say like, hey, look, I've seen that, I've done that. It actually worked pretty well. And a lot of the early folks that came on and took a shot on me and took a shot on Integrate, I think that they saw that I was able to do that along with, my counterpart JD. And they said, okay, yeah, if those guys can do it, we can do it. And then we just sort of built off of that.
What did that look like in the early days? Like what was your sales process like? And you mentioned product market fit. In other words, you needed to find product market fit.
Yeah.
What was just give me a sense of what your sales motion looked like.
So I know you've heard the term like sort of disrupting a market, right? I didn't know what that really meant. If I reflect back on TechTarget, they absolutely disrupted how B2B media was delivered, bought, sold, information was shared, etc. I didn't realize that Integrate was just, I still feel to this day, disrupting the way B2B marketers think about organizing and orchestrating demand generation. But back then, I'll never forget, I was reflecting on this last night as I was thinking about our conversation. Jeremy Dempsey and I sitting up late, on the phone, just trying to pitch each other back and forth. Like, do you think they'll respond to this? Do you think they'll respond? So that's what I mean about true product market fit. We were like, okay, we're going to look them in the eye and say, you don't know that you have a problem yet, but you do. And I'm not saying Challenger, because we weren't trained in Challenger yet. Shoot, man, we didn't have the money to do that. Absolutely not. But we were like, what is going to get them to lean in on this a little bit more? And so we play with that a lot. And then again, we found a couple of use cases. And once we found a couple of use cases that really stuck, we really just not even doubled down, tripled it down, quadrupled down on that and said like, look, you guys are having these problems. Your tech stack and your marketing organization looks and smells like these other customers that we've already brought on. That again, I don't want to keep saying like that cliche, the rest is history, but it really did go by like that, because all of a sudden I'll never forget, I don't want to name brands, right? But like in one quarter, we closed 3 really, really, really big brands, all Marketo shops, the 2 Marketo shops and an Eloqua shop. Wow. And at the time, Marketo and Eloqua were looking at Integrate going like, what are you guys doing? Are you a competitor? Are you an Integrate partner? Like, what are you? And by closing, 2 out of their 3 largest customers, we had one of the largest Eloqua installs bring us on pretty much really early on. And they're like, okay, wait a minute. You're not combative, you're actually disruptive, and we're leaning in. And that actually helped catapult us to the next level. And the last thing I'll say, Jay, which I think is really critical, our customers were willing to talk to other prospects, because unlike media, where I was always like, hey, can you, hey, Dell, can you talk to these guys? And they're like, no, I'm not telling them why I think TechTarget is so great. I'm going to tell, they're a competitor of mine. We would be like, hey, tell them why you think you're efficient. Tell them why you think you're getting more ROI out of the system. And this is when marketing technology was sort of getting up into the right? Nobody really knew it. It was a cool thing. Now people are banking their careers, not just on marketing technology. Some of them bank their careers on Integrate. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. In other words, if they don't have Integrate as a tool, they perceive that that's really necessary and they could fail or not necessarily do what they need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still fascinated by the sort of role playing that you were having with Jeremy in terms of like, do you think this will work? And I think this will work. Where did the conversation start? In other words, there had to have been a hypothesis somewhere of what would resonate with the prospects, would resonate with customers.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Yeah.
The pivot point for us, I'm going to name another name. His name's Scott Vaughn, who came in as our CMO. Really, this is a gentleman who could have gone anywhere, and he took a shot on us, and probably because he saw a very similar vision. But he came in and said, JD and I are late night conversations, and we got a couple of wins, like nothing crazy. But Scott came in and said, no, these are the 4 things that you need to think about, because Scott was a marketer. So one thing we didn't have, we had some great marketing talent. So I don't want to just, anybody who's listening to this who was early integrate, I don't want to, but when Scott came in, he was like, I'm actually the guy that buys you. And here are the 4 things that I am challenged with that your software solves for. So once he came in, it became less about us selling and more about us, focusing on the pain points, right? And then solving those pain points. And then the last thing, not the last thing Scott did for us, but like the second thing that he really is like, focus on customer success. If you focus on customer success, they will then, display to the world how great, they look because they bought you, and then they'll, your next prospect will look because they bought you, and so on down the line. So Vaughn was super critical to us because he was the persona that we were trying to sell to. But I wish I could take credit for that, Jay, but he definitely came in and said, like, all right, you guys are onto something. And at that point, we had built a really good sales team. Like folks that took the shot on me early on, like Ed LaPlante and Eric Belcher, these guys, I'm going to name them just in case they, Ben Henson, oh my gosh, Farrah Forbes, Mark Ostrander, they all had careers, and they all were like, and they, some of them knew me, some of them didn't. They came in like, they just saw the vision. And then Vaughn came in, put it all together. And because he was our persona, that took us to the next level.
Very interesting. What year was that Vaughn came in?
Oh boy, 2013. I was only here maybe a year.
Okay, so very early. Yeah, very early.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then, as it pertained to the actual sales motion, was it you were picking up the phone and making calls? Was it?
Yeah.
Did you use marketing automation? Like, give me a sense of what that looked like.
No, we did not use marketing automation. No. We were like startup to the thing. Like if you shut your eyes and think about like, is the door going to be open today when I show up at the office? Like, that's okay. I don't mind telling that story. Like we were that startup. Now we weren't broke. We had taken a Series B on from phenomenal investors, really smart folks. We just didn't know, were we spending the right way and so forth. So like we were bootstrapping it, Excel file, which I still think is the greatest software ever written. Like we were running our business out of Excel. We were based outside of here in Boston, and the headquarters was in Scottsdale. So it was just, a sales office, right? It was awesome. But it was banging phones. And a lot of us had been in the industry. So one of the things that we did early on, was really surround ourselves with people we knew we could trust. We were willing to take a shot, and had a couple of relationships like that and they forged those relationships, because when you're disrupting a market and saying, I'm going to ask you to do something really, really different, you have to trust me. There needs to be, some trust in the background that was already earned from a different business, from a different, personal, professionally, whatever it might be. And that's what, again, I mentioned names, I'm going to forget some, but like Ben and Farrah and Eric, like all those guys brought some great key relationships that took shots on us early on.
And you were at TechTarget, where you had been selling to a similar persona there, correct?
Yeah, B2B tech was and is, I'm not as familiar with TechTarget's business as I was back then, but was their core. So we built Integrate's business on B2B tech. We're certainly cross vertical now, but B2B tech was our foundation, because a lot of what I just said, the relationships came from that. Yeah.
And more specifically, B2B marketing tech.
Yeah, B2B marketing tech. Yes, exactly. We were selling at TechTarget, we'd be selling sort of, I don't want to simplify what they sold back then. They have a much bigger business now, but lead generation. Like we said, hey, look, we have this great audience reading this website, and they're interested in the topics that you're selling to. Like, isn't it easy for you to get in front of? Like, we're inviting you to a party that we already have the right people at.
Yeah.
And then when it came to integrate, we would say to those exact same personas, hey, remember when we were like, still buy those leads? That's great. Like, but how are you getting them from point A to point B? And that's where integrate sort of closed the gap. It's like, hey, look, you can generate a lead, but if you have to wait till Friday to get that lead, is it stale? Is it not? Is it compliant? Does the email work? All those other things. If you plugged it into Integrate, early on, our main value proposition is like, get the data from the publisher or the media company into Integrate. We'll clean it up and post it into marketing automation immediately. So it allowed marketing organizations, the same folks that we were selling leads to say, look, buy leads from anywhere you want to buy them.
Yeah.
And plug it all into Integrate, and we'll make it as easy as possible.
Got it.
Yeah.
And the folks that you had relationships with that you brought on to start, to sell, or maybe you had tangential relationships, did they also have domain expertise, or were they from different?
Yeah,
They did.
I think it's a really great question, because it was important to, some of them I had worked with, they were colleagues of mine. Others worked for competitors of my old organization. Ben Henson in particular, we connected. He worked with me at TechTarget. He had gone on to do some really successful things at other businesses. We kind of regrouped, and he was actually the first one to jump right over. And another guy, Sean Flynn, like those guys jumped right on it. We're like, hey, let's get in on this thing. And then the other guys followed right after that. So they all had domain experience. And I think that's important to note, because when, maybe not so much now, but I do think when you're not just starting a startup, but I go back to that disrupting, just doing something differently, you need a core group of people that believe in the vision, but you got to listen to your clients or the prospects. And if you've done right by them, a lot of us had 10 plus years experience. If you had done right by them for the last 10 years, and then I say like, hey, you've bought milk from me before, like, do you want to try orange juice now? It's totally different. It solves a total different thirst, but like, you trusted me on the milk, you want to trust me on this. And that worked really well early on. Now, obviously, it's a little bit more of a machine, right? A SaaS machine, yeah.
Yeah. And so how quickly then did you go from that conversation that you had with Jeremy and sort of war gaming it, so to speak, to being in a position where you were hiring the people that you had just mentioned?
100 days. 100 days. 100 days.
Oh, 100 days. Okay.
Yeah. And the reason why I remember that, Jay, is I was in New York. Man, I hope Jeremy, maybe he'll let this video, but my CEO, I remember being in New York, and I hadn't closed really anything yet. I was coming up on day 75.
Okay.
He had an office on Wall Street, and I was coming down to see him. And I remember looking him in the eye and I go, I know you're going to fire me soon because I haven't closed anything. I just need a little bit longer. And like a week later, we brought one in. I say we because I didn't do anything by myself ever here, not once.
Yeah.
The only thing I might be able to take a little bit of credit for is opening it up to my network, the opportunity that Integrate has become. And I think if you ask any of those folks, they would have called it an opportunity. But I said to Jeremy, like, dude, you're going to fire me. I get it. I totally get it. Just give me a little bit longer. And then, here we are.
So you're saying on the 100th day is when you close your first?
About that, yeah. No, I closed it right after that. And then once we closed Dell, he said, go find me more people like you. Because Dell, I can name Dell, they won't mind. They were a big brand for us.
And so was that the I don't know what the word I want to use, MO, I guess you use for hiring. In other words, you closed Dell, and I was like, okay, now that you closed a large deal, presumably, now we can go and hire, as opposed to what I think a lot of people have done, certainly over the last several years, may have been hire ahead of that. In other words, like, let's hire a bunch of people to go get Dell, as opposed to what you were doing, which was you closed Dell, and then you started hiring folks to use the revenue from that. Is that how that was working back then?
You got to remember, we're talking 11 years ago, right? It's a total different investment market.
Yeah.
So now it's, here's my vision, right? And give me a bunch of money. And well, maybe not even so much now, but
right. So it's kind of
3 years
where it
ago,
was. Yeah, right.
you'd be like, hey, give me a bunch of money. I'm going to show you growth. I don't need to tell the audience about what the macro is right now, but the last almost full decade has been like, the company is worth the growth. It's actually not worth the revenue. Whereas we always started on, and the folks at TechTarget, the really smart leadership at TechTarget were smart that way too. Like, they didn't take money just to take money. They took it and then spent it super wisely. So when Integrate closed its Series B, we agreed early on, you needed to be profitable. And once you got a rep prop, so I became very quickly a dual role. I had a small set of customers, and then the team that I've already mentioned several times, and they were building their own businesses. And each time one of those became profitable, like legitimately, Jay, we would sit down and say, how much money did they bring in last month, month to month, not quarter to quarter, month to month at the time. And are they profitable? They are profitable after comp, health, all the other things. Now you can go get another one. So that's how it worked early on. And it worked really well. And it wasn't a long time. I'm not saying it was painful. It really wasn't. It was actually super fun. And it created a really cool competitiveness where it'd be like, would you do that? You know what I mean? We had the bell in the office. Everybody was like really thinking about it smartly. And then, you know, again, once you flip the profit, I was allowed to hire another person in so many words.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. When did that change, if ever? Why did that change, if it did?
Yeah.
And actually, I'll stop there.
Yeah. I mean, we took a Series C. I mean, that was a pretty, and we had some other investors come in that were smart. Jeremy, one thing about our CEO, Jeremy, was amazing at not just raising money. He could have raised hundreds of millions of dollars if he wanted to. He chose to raise the right amount of money at the right time. And so I think that's right around when it changed. I don't know the exact date, man. I will say by that point, Scott Bond, whom I mentioned, our CMO, he was in role. You know, we had a really core sales team. Everybody was making their number. You know, the company was growing, you know, that sort of early SaaS model, double, triple, double. Like we were following that trajectory. And so it wasn't hard for us to say, hey, look, I need another person. We probably, I don't even know if we ever got to, like, we're still hiring now. Like, that's just how it is, you know? So, yeah, I can't remember the exact date. It's definitely early on, probably 2014, right? It wasn't like it was later. And we still had yet to have that product market fit, but people were profitable. Again, I go back on that. Like, they were closing enough business to not only pay for themselves, to like really pay for the customer success manager that needed to manage that thing, the campaign manager that needed to help the client. Like, so everything was chicken before the egg, and the chicken was the revenue. The egg became the supporting role, and that was super fun.
So I want to come back to that product market fit that you just said there, but as it pertains to the why did that shift? In other words, you got the C round, presumably, obviously it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
What were there market conditions that said, okay, we forget about the profitability model of per rep, we need to go out and do it in a different way? In other words, grow more aggressively, hire more aggressively ahead of something. Was it because to take advantage of an obvious opportunity in the market? Were there more competitors? Like, what shifted?
Well, one of the things, so I'm gonna answer that question two different ways, or in two different parts. If you ask Jeremy, he'd probably answer it totally different. I don't think that we ever looked at macro early on at the macro. We were really focused on what can we do, right? What can Integrate do to, and now I'm not saying we didn't pay attention, but we paid attention based on a core set of customers and prospects that we knew that if we won, we would win, period, right?
Yeah.
So we would listen to them versus listen to like, you know, some of the organizations out there that like talk about, you know, 20,000, you know, now it's what, up 8,000 MarTech, you know, all of us were saying the same thing, right? We were just saying, like, let's just focus on what we know we can accomplish. So there wasn't really a macro. We did start to close. I mentioned, you know, 3, 4. We started closing the enterprise, and we're like, wait a minute. We used to think we could sell to anybody. We are an enterprise solution now. So it was the crossroad of saying, okay, we have value proposition that would allow a big company to invest in us and consider us core. Do we have the product to fit it? And now the early product folks were amazing. And you know, Vids and Bo, like these guys were awesome, but they didn't have any money to build on the product. So that's what we did with that next round is like, you know, a lot of Series C, you read about, they're going to sales and marketing. We were still grassrooting that thing. And we were saying, let's take that money now, do some marketing with it, no doubt, but focus on the product. And how can we launch a new product, a new platform like everybody does, but that is truly enterprise ready? Because the old one was a great story and it did some really cool things, but how we really, you know, blow it up. And that's what we did. So again, I don't know if I'm fully answering your question, but the two factors were focus on ourselves and what we know we can do well, and then take the money and invest in the product, because then after that, things will follow.
Right. And I guess in addition to that, or at the same time, concurrently, you mentioned at some point you started hiring a lot of people too as well.
Yeah.
Was the profitability per rep shifted because you invested so much in the tech development of the technology, or that was a completely separate line item?
No, it's a good question. I think, I've spoken on the majority about integrated software model. Part of our software bolted onto it is a marketplace that customers, if they want to buy demand from LinkedIn and Facebook and TechTarget and all these other companies that are out there, wonderful. Our software will help them, work one to many. In a lot of cases, customers are saying like, okay, I would like to work one to many. Like, can you, do you have any other relationships? And so we had built this marketplace of just trusted partners that said, look, if you want to buy leads from our trusted partners, you can do that. And that became a revenue stream for us, and a really big one. At the time, there weren't a lot of companies out there doing these sort of networked marketplaces. There were. I'm not saying we were the only one. I'm not saying we were the first one. So when we crystal clear to those out there who are, but we had a different model. We were like, hey, look, work one to many. We'll give you the people, process. Most importantly, we'll give you the technology to manage it all. So that media dollars that came in allowed reps who might, a software sale can be, especially in the enterprise, 9 to 12 months, but we could sell media pretty quickly. We were saying, hey, look, let's get profitable on the media side while we're building. And what was cool, Jay, was the people buying the leads through the integrated marketplace needed the software to actually, run the whole thing. So it really was a perfect, and it still remains to be, a joint revenue stream for both our customers and for Integrate. But so, back to your question, like, I guess the third pillar of what I should say is we did make a hard and fast stand saying like, look, we could go down the path of being a really cool demand gen media company or a really awesome software company. And we said, let's do both. So that's what we did. So we had this great revenue stream coming in, plus some money from the Series C. I think we started turning profits. I mean, I don't remember the exact year, but we started like flipping profits and things like that because the media. And then now we always had this mantra early on, like, can we operate the software business as a standalone? Like, when do we get? Jeremy used to call it SaaS Island. Like, how do we get to SaaS Island where we can literally move on to the island and we'd be self-sustainable? And, I think we hit that in like 2015 or something like that. So it was cool. Like, we had this great media business, this great software business. They intersected perfectly. And we had allowed our customers to both. And that worked really well for us.
And how fast were you growing at this particular time? Obviously you mentioned 2015 or so.
Yeah.
You got there in 2012. Like, give me a sense of growth trajectory there. You mentioned
it's pretty rapid. I mean, I don't know the exact figures. I do know that, we went 0 to a while. I don't know that I can share the financials just because of my new ownership, but like we went 0 to 100 customers, like big customers, Jay. I'm not talking about like $10,000 ARR, like really big customers in those early years. And then each one of those customers also spent in the marketplace. So it was like we kind of like had this cool thing going. And then we bought a couple of, it's kind of hard to say, but we were absolutely like, if we weren't growing 50 to 60 or doubling every year, like it was a loss year.
Right. Yeah.
So
Okay.
It's easy to grow 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 40.
Yeah.
It's harder when you get to 100 and you got to get to, the 200. Yeah.
Yep. I want to come back to product market fit for a moment, because you said obviously when you were raising and closed that Series C that you hadn't had the product market fit yet. You had a market, but the product was still being, needed to be fleshed out.
Yeah.
What was there a risk of building the wrong product for the enterprise?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Tell me
I remember like we had Ben Henson, I remember. I don't mind. I don't know, like these guys deserve all the credit. We challenged him to bring on a really, really big company who's based just outside of Seattle or in Seattle. You might have heard of them. And we're like, go get them as a client. And he said, okay. But he's like, not on that system, among other words, right? So like we were kind of thinking about this thing, and the new platform was not ready. Our CPO at the time was an awesome guy. I love Richard Owen, and he was building this thing. And we had to migrate. We had all these things that software companies typically run into, where you have to actually, you got to take customers on this system, you got to move in that system while you're selling that system. Oh, don't forget, we're still kind of selling here. But Ben put Microsoft on our new system way before it was ready. And what that did was cause us a year of sleepless nights, but oh my gosh, did it push the product team to the brink of And what was really great about Microsoft, if I can give them credit, they are true when they believe in something, they're true co-development partners. They believed in the new system and they still believe into it today. And they were like, we will be patient, like just don't overpromise and underdeliver. And that was super smart, I think, of us to say, like, let's push our product team. And what better way to push? The product team is going to listen to me to a certain point, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it early on. I might be able to say a few things, but at the end of the day, I'm the salesperson who's chasing squirrels. And if somebody wants something blue and I want it blue because I want to get that deal done, product might have to lift mountains to turn it blue. When you have Microsoft pushing you to do it.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, because then there's wait, and did Microsoft, the conversation that you had with Microsoft, I'm assuming they helped shape the product as well, right? In other words, because what they were looking for, as long as the product team could deliver and build it, then it was almost served as a blueprint for, the other large enterprise customers.
Their use case was similar to every other customer we had at the time.
Mhm.
Where they were pushing us was on the analytics, the nuances things, and really big on compliance. I mean, our story around compliance is so tight because data comes from everywhere. And if you're in marketing, you could be out on the road, and if you grab the wrong record, like if you grab a lead in Germany and it wasn't made on German soil, like on a server, like you're GDPR compliant, 4% of your revenue can get dinged. Like that is a massive problem. So Microsoft was pushing us around that data validity compliance angle, and that really helped us actually rethink our value prop. Because we're like, wait a minute, they never once said we're buying you because they echo like data governance and efficiencies and some of those things, but they said we're putting in Integrate because it's ensuring that every record that comes into their system was compliant. That's how we were like, ooh, light bulb, thank you, Microsoft. And
Right.
That team that helped us with that is still in place today, and we can't thank them enough.
How long did it take to get that right and to ultimately close them?
Oh man. Pilot wasn't too long. Ben did a great job. He got them leaning in really early on, but they did like a 90-day pilot and then they went big right after that. So it was under 6 months.
Okay.
And now that was like 7 years ago.
What about growing pains? Obviously there's there you go. I hit a nerve.
This used to be blonde, bro. I'm 25.
I used to have hair. At least you still have it.
Right. No, yeah, there was enough of those. Yeah.
Tell me about that. And how did you give me a story, a growth pain anecdote, if you will.
This is certainly turning into a history lesson about Integrate, but I think it's a good one. I think, one of the things early on, we had some amazing team, Justin Eisner and Maureen Beatty, who came in to run customer success, and we didn't even know what really customer success was. And we needed that. Before the two of them came to our business early on, we had salespeople like in the system with clients, like just, in software sales, there's still some hands-on work, right? And there is an Integrate. We know Excel, I just, I made that comment, like it's the best software ever written. I don't think anyone's going to argue that today, but you still have to input something into Excel to make it work. It's magic. Integrate was no different than that. So, and I think our biggest growing pain early on was customer adoption, is getting them to be like, I believe your story. Oh my gosh, Scott Vaughn told it so well. And he was a practitioner, and we already had the connectivity between Eloqua and Marketo and Salesforce. Like all the tech was done. The story was tight. But then like we were one of those systems to be like, all right, can I put you in, forget you? Or do I have to think about you every single day? So early on, they did have to think about us every day. And Maureen and Justin, our early customer success team, they came in and got the customers to think, no, think about how this can make your life. Yes, you have to come in and touch me every day, but it'll save you, 15 minutes in the morning saves you hours in the afternoon. So that was a massive growing pain, I think, is just customer adoption. We had some retention issue early on, some churn, which is that's the devil in a software business that you're trying to grow. We attacked that right away through product, customer success, and just really keeping sales involved, I think, all along. So that was a big growing pain, I'd say 13, 14. I don't want to say the biggest, but something that I mentioned, our media side of our business, our solution, and then our software side, like sort of decoupling that, but also reminding people that it's a solution, like that because you're talking to different personas, right, Jay? Like you're talking to a marketing operations person who cares about the software. You're talking to a demand gen person who might care about the software, but they also care about like, hey, I need to generate really smart leads,
Yeah.
or that are engaged and things like that. Can your marketplace help me? So it was combining that, but decoupling it at the right time. Like, when do you sit on your hands and tell the client? We used to have this saying, like, you need to take vitamins, but you're taking drugs. The software are your vitamins. That is the smart way to think about your business. But you need drugs because you have to keep the machine going. So I'll sell you leads, which are kind of like, but that became like, we got away from that because that made lead gen sound like it was a bad thing. And it really isn't. It's critical to people scaling their businesses. And we want it to be a solve for that. So, but I think those three things: customer adoption, early on churn, and making sure the business was smart in our go-to-market about how we approach media and how we approached software was important. And then later on, when we made a couple acquisitions, a whole new set of growing pains. So
Yeah, for sure, man. There's so many questions. Let me just go touch on the adoption. Obviously, like the lack of adoption certainly would affect churn. It's almost like a 1-to-1 in a way, because
Yeah.
if they're not adopting it during onboarding and implementation, then it's a high probability that they're going to
Yeah.
churn if they're not seeing it valuable to their business, or at least they think it is, right? As a painful
Well
thing
said.
to actually have to do every day, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I think here was the, I don't want to take credit for it, but I remember saying this, somebody on the team might have said it, but we used to say, like, if you buy Integrate once, like, that could have been a really good sales job. If you renew me, I'm critical to your business. And once we all believe that, I mean this seriously, right? I'm smiling and things like that, but there were a few core values that we agreed internally. We could have sold anybody Integrate early on. People would have bought it. We were good salespeople. Those guys that are out there now, they're starting business, like they're great, amazing relationship sales folks. If you buy me once, it could be on me. If you renew me, I'm core to your business. And now if you look at our renewal rate, world-class renewal rates. And that had everything to do with that customer success motion that sales can't really plug into. And Scott Vaughn was critical in that early on too. So I think it was having those types of sort of marching things, like, gosh, did you get the renewal? Well, no, I didn't. Well, then the year that you just wasted selling them, you didn't get the renewal on. And now we got to replace that one. And
Right.
kind of had this founder's mentality because we've stuck together so long in the early stages, that we pushed each other to that. And it was less than a year. You could ask Jeremy the stats, but where we turn around immediately through focus.
This, obviously, the podcast is called The Goats of Growth, which is why I love having these kinds of conversations, because I'm literally just growing with you here through this journey, which I think is really cool. It's a little bit of a double entendre though too, as I'm realizing, which is personal growth. So it's not just business growth, but it's also personal growth as well. So how did you grow as a leader, coming from TechTarget as the senior director of sales, then becoming an individual contributor again at Integrate, and then building up a team again, but then building up a team that is, it's not just you and your people in your network, but it's beyond that, and you're operating a sophisticated growth engine. Like, tell me about that and any personal growing pains that you had and how you were able to break through them to become a better leader.
Yeah, great question. I don't know that I could like point to a handful of things. I think I know the business, right? And you mentioned domain expertise. Like, so when you know something, I often hear people say, like, oh, you speak so passionately. Well, if you do something or you're in the same industry, you speak super passionately, right? Because why? You care about this podcast and you're super excited. Like, I've been in this for 2 decades now. Half of my career has been in B2B media or B2B technology, right? So and I'm selling to the same persona. So it's hard not to be passionate about it. I think where I've found it grow, I believe, is, I don't know, man, just ebbs and flows with the business, going with the business, letting it come to me. I used to try to solve everything, whether it be comp and and early on, like, is payroll like all those things. Then it was like, nope, just focus on the sales. And then now, as I'm getting a little bit, not bigger, like higher up in my career, I'm trying to round those edges, right? Where it's like, okay, how do I think about it operationally? Can I run a P&L, like a true P&L, for
Mhm.
Jeremy and our CFO. And how does the sales and marketing and customer success, people leave that out? How does that connectivity? I think that's where I've been trying to grow the most. The growing pain is I am so far away from the customer right now. It's painful. I wake up and I say this, with passion. I wake up and think about my team, the people
Mm.
above me, the people that are directs. And
Yeah.
I used to wake up and think about the client, right? So
Mm.
like as you go higher, I don't know if you talk to Goats of Growth all the time, like
Mm.
maybe they have the same sentiment, but my biggest growing pain is I used to enjoy sitting in front of the CMO of Dell and telling her at the time, Karen, like you're doing it wrong. And now I rely on, I'm far away from that. So
Yeah.
there's still deals I'm in, but not the way it used to be. And that's hard.
What do you
That's
think?
one thing.
That's an interesting, I love that. What are you thinking when you think about the team, like broadly? You don't have to get specific, but just broadly when you think about the team, what are you thinking about in terms of
Boy, I
Wait.
really, really love my team.
Mhm.
Every person who's come through Integrate, I've always, well, and I mean that, like they all of them have taken a shot to leave because we don't hire, respectfully, we don't hire kids out of college,
Mhm.
right? It just, we don't have that sort of motion to be able to train a person how to sell and then how to sell Integrate. So we've asked everybody to come on board and take a shot on us. And the names that I mentioned early on, they took really, I mean, we're talking about people with growing families
Mm.
coming to a startup that, may or may not have enough money to, so like
Right.
that to me, if they're willing to take a shot on me, I'm gonna do anything I can for them. And I still do that for them, a lot, all of them today. I think yeah, so I adore working for them. I adore working with them. I think Integrate is cool. The technology is cool. Our customers are great, but I'm here largely because of my team. I love them. Yeah.
And what do you think, just to stick to that for a moment, what do you think your team, or maybe what do you know, I guess your team needs from you, or even you can even talk more broadly about it if you want to, which is what do you think teams generally need from their leader?
Yeah. Well, I think I wasn't I was an individual contributor not too long ago, right? It wasn't like a lifetime ago. So you want a leader, I think, that is, they're going to hold you accountable, right? One thing, every one of they will all tell me I don't hold them accountable enough. So when you have, it's like, hold me accountable and I'll hold you accountable and they'll hold them accountable. So I think good leaders hold their reps accountable or their team accountable. But then they block and tackle. They're willing to, maybe something goes south with a customer. I'll hop on that call because you have the relationship. It's not your fault it went south. I'll take that. I have the S in front of my title. Like, let me take that lump. So sometimes it's blocking and tackling. And then right now, I think with some of the folks that I mentioned already, they're still with us. We're talking like, how many goats that still have people that have worked for them for 10 years
Yeah.
in software?
Many,
Right?
yeah.
I'm not saying that has something to do with me.
Yeah.
I think it has something to do with just building the right team culture.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, if you were to ask somebody, but I will say, I'll do a bad call, I'll do a good call, I'll ask for a raise. Now, with a lot of these folks, I'm focused on their career growth. Because as much as we all love this company, we're not going to retire here. And we're all going to business school here at Integrate while we're getting to the next level, learning from Audix, our PE firm, and so forth. So my job right now, block and tackle, and then also try to stay as high as I can to make sure that they don't have to manage up, but they can also grow their careers. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
What's your definition of growing your career, growing their careers?
Well, it's different for every individual. I will say that it's very different. We've all heard that saying that, the best salesperson doesn't make the best sales manager. Like that's factual. Some people just, doesn't matter how seasoned they are. I don't want to say old, how seasoned they are in their career. They just want to do big deals, right? We have people here that they just want to do big deals. And then we have young folks who are amazing and future leaders that they want to be leader after deal one. So you just got to manage that, balance that. So I don't have a universal answer there. I think each individual has to have a career growth plan. Fortunately, I have an incredible human resources department that they basically gave me the playbook on how to sort of take people and rise them up. And then I just got to fill in the cracks and the gaps with how to do so in a sales world. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I asked it that way, because, you know, obviously people are motivated differently by different things. And sometimes, in my mind, sometimes even career growth is, to your point, you're talking about like closing bigger deals, right? Sometimes it could just be about learning more and becoming better at your craft and being able to have maybe different conversations with different stakeholders or different buyers, or maybe it's about, I don't know, even board visibility or something, you know, something, you know, like that, as far as how to prepare for a next round of funding or something, you know.
I think it's very well summed. I think there are people that are like, I would like to be in the boardroom. And then sometimes you're like, why? Why do you want to be in the boardroom? And no, that's only because I've sat in boardrooms for so long. Now, I love the boardroom, but like, again, I mentioned earlier the growing pain of being away from the customer. So you just have to ask them, like, what do you want? Do you want to do big deals, or do you want to learn the business side? If you want to learn the business side, well, let's talk about how you can get there. If you want to continue to do big deals, well, let's talk about how you can get there. If you want to converge the two, well, that's my job. So no.
Right, for sure. Well, that's the other thing too, is speaking of growth, you know, career growth, is sometimes, you know, you're preparing people for other opportunities outside of Integrate.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
The greatest saying that I've read, we've all read it on LinkedIn, is, you know, what happens when we train our people and they leave? And then the follow-up is like, well, what happens when we don't train and they stay? Like, so the biggest thing you want to do is like, so right now, Integrate is fortunate enough with the great PE, like we're investing in, you know, not just Challenger, which we've done for years, but like the second and third tier of Challenger, Medic, and like really getting people to think about how to round out those edges of becoming a sales professional or a sales leader. What does forecasting look like next level? I think where we're headed, I do not want to go down a rabbit hole because I'm sure we could talk about it a whole other hour, but what is AI and machine learning going to do to the sales individual? What is that going to happen? How do we need to think about that as sales leaders? Because I have a slew of people from Singapore to London to Phoenix, Arizona to Boston, Massachusetts, who are looking at me going, what is AI going to do to my job? And we need to be thinking about that. So I think, you know, that's where I get where career growth for me personally, I'm interested in learning that, and disseminating might be the wrong word, but feeding back that or educating that back down to my team, down again is the wrong word I'm trying to, but back to the team. And also got to keep them focused, because guess what? We do have a number that we need to hit. So like, I want you to grow. I want you to do those things. And one thing, the best way to do that, by the way, is to perform. I don't think we've said that yet. Best way to get anywhere you want to go is perform.
Yeah, perform in the right way.
Yeah, in the right way. Yes.
Yep, for sure. Fantastic. Yeah, the every time we talk, obviously everybody's talking about ChatGPT, and I keep coming back to, and I've mentioned this a number of times on this podcast, it's because I think it's so instructive, is that movie Hidden Figures.
Yeah.
Right, where, you know, they were doing the math themselves and trying to figure out how to get these, you know, these space shuttles to the out of to the moon, right?
Yeah.
To outer space. And then all of a sudden IBM comes in, and, you know, people start bugging out because a lot of jobs are lost. What are they going to do? But the main character, you know, she was smart enough to figure out, okay, well, not what the machine's going to do to me, it's what I'm going to do to the machine, or how I'm going to use this machine. And I think, you know, as practitioners, as knowledge workers, right? I think to use these things, just like Integrate, right? Integrate is a tool to help people do what they need to do so that they don't have to do it alone, right?
Yeah.
And I know like Microsoft is coming out with Copilot that I'm really excited about as an Office 365 user, and all that stuff, I think, to make us more efficient. So yeah, we could have a whole nother hour on that. And you know what? We can easily have a whole nother hour on your international sales experience as well. Something I wish I touched on in terms of EMEA and APAC and all that stuff. So maybe one day, you know, I'll ask you to come back. Hopefully you'll say yes, and we'll talk about, you know, growing teams internationally.
Yeah, anytime. That I will say, just not to belabor that point, because that is the one ask I had, and he was graciously kind, but my old CRO was like, I do not want to lose the international piece. I mentioned I was in London last week, and that to me is critical of my career growth. I'm not you know, I joke around when I do visit the UK office, like, here comes the dumb American. I'm gonna tell you how we do things and in our world, and you got to rinse and repeat that. No, I go there to learn from them as to how to do business, you know, in the United Kingdom, in EMEA, and beyond. And then I look forward to going to Singapore and learning that from the APJ market as well. So that to me, it's not about, by the way, Jay, this isn't because I want to be some CEO one day. That's not it. So I literally want to learn that part. I'm using Integrate as my business school. I'm not smart enough to get into Harvard, so I'm going to use this as my business school. And if I can get a degree in international business through Integrate, I'm going to take that.
Do you want to be a CEO one day?
I don't think so.
No.
I think so. No, I don't. I need a co-founder maybe, but I don't. Oh, the only reason why I need a check and balance. Like, you can ask my peers. Like, I sometimes need to double check whether or not I'm going to get lunch, right? So just like, you know, just to make sure I'm not making the wrong decision, right? And I think that's when you're, so having the 24/7, I don't know, that's never been a thing for me. No, I know a lot of my friends are the 24/7 and they're amazing at it. And I always knew they would be, but I don't really have that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with my role. Everybody needs a role, and I got one.
That's right. Yep, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Well, that's a good transition to the rapid fire 5. First question, if you're ready.
Ready.
Question is, what motivates you? If it's not getting to CEO, what does motivate you? And maybe it's not business related at all.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to answer a lot of these. I read them last night the same way, but so like personally motivating me is just, you know, my family motivates me. They're super supportive. I'm supportive of them in everything they do, and everything that I do. So, and then professionally, motivation is the team. We talked a lot about it about 10 minutes ago. Like, that is my motivation. Especially now where I'm a little bit further away from the client, where the customer, whereas, you know, the last 10 years, it was like the customer motivates me, but now it's the team that motivates me and their success, and celebrating their wins. That's a win for me. So, and I truly mean that. I know it's kind of cliche, but the team motivates me. That's why I get up in the morning.
Love it. Name a big goal you have right now and
yeah.
when you would like to accomplish it.
Personally, I would like to shoot in the 80s on the golf course. So it shows you how poor I am at golf. So it's my personal goal. Professionally, I don't have like a core goal. I mentioned I don't want to be, you know, CROs in the, you know, certainly like, yeah, I want to round the edges of what it means to be a sales leader. You know, does everyone want a bigger team? Maybe. Yeah. But if, you know, Integrate's provided me a bigger team. We had 1, and then we had 2, then we had 4, then we had, like, so it's not like it can't happen. Like, I don't need to really think beyond that, but I want to round off. I have a lot of gaps, which we have not covered on. I have a lot of blind spots, and I want to round those out. I know what some of them are, and I want to, you know, shine a light on those. So that's my goal, and that's just forever, man. Right? That's not, you know, one goal. I wish I could say I wanted to run a marathon or you know, climb Everest or anything like that. No, my goals are simple. Just be happy.
Here, with you. What's your most preferred way to learn new information?
Yeah.
To stay sharp.
LinkedIn's my platform, right? I love LinkedIn. I'm not a Twitter guy. I think there's a lot of personally, there's a lot of noise in Twitter. LinkedIn's my platform, and then I gut check what I read with my network. I have a very core group of, depending on what I'm talking about, you know, I have solutions consultants. I have those guys if I have a question. You know, my AI machine learning network is starting to, because the biggest thing is you can read. My father used to always say, like, don't believe anything you read and only half of what you see. But on LinkedIn, when people are really, they're selling themselves, aren't they? Like, that's really what they're doing. They're not going to put up any BS. So if I read something that's super interesting, or my reps or my teammates are kind enough to share something that they think I'm interesting, I'll read it and then double down on that, maybe, you know, follow up with my network or things like that. So that, to me, it's a kind of a trifold, right? Read it, learn from my peers, and then learn from my network.
I am fascinated with this. I was talking to somebody earlier today about just how much peer-to-peer learning I feel like I'm doing, almost in an ad hoc way, right? Not necessarily anything that's structured or planned or even intended, but just having these conversations like you and I are having here, which I love this podcast because it's like literally a masterclass on all things sales and growth. But just like some of these private conversations that we have about ChatGPT and just all the technology and tools and just other ways. So Frankly, that's how you and I met on LinkedIn. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I applaud the way this format that you do with these podcasts, because it allows for openness and things like that. And you know, I have watched several of them, and it's like, you know, we're not all thinking the same thing. We all have our own problems, but
Yep.
we all have similar goals, which is, you know,
Mhm.
grow whatever it is that we're personally, professionally, business wise, et cetera. So
that's right. Thank you.
keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate that. Number 4, how many hours of sleep do you average per night?
Maybe 6.
Right there with you.
That's usually I'll fall asleep for a couple hours. I'll wake up for 3 hours, fall asleep for a couple hours.
That sounds a lot like
My
me.
head starts going. So once the head goes, no amount of melatonin is going to get me back to sleep.
I posted that about that last week. I woke up at 2:15 in the morning, and I decided I would flip the morning. I decided that what could I do at 2:15? Well, I got out of bed at 3:15. So it's like, what can I do at 3:15 that I normally would do at 7 a.m.? And I just
Yeah.
did that. And
Yeah.
then I had every intention of actually going and taking a nap around like 7. It didn't happen, of course. But
Yeah, no, of course. Why would you? Because then you're in a different mindset, and there's a whole other thing. So yeah, I think it sounds like you and I are. Last night I woke up at 2:15. I thought about the rapid 5. To be honest with you, I was like, okay, but I don't think I'm answering them any way that I thought about it at 2:30.
That's fantastic. That's the first with the rapid fire 5 is keeping someone up at night. I love it.
Yeah, no, good.
Oh my gosh. Last question and then the bonus. What's your favorite thing to do when you aren't working?
I mentioned golf. I think personally, I really enjoy golf and skiing, and we talked about it early on. Like I can see with your pictures behind you that you have children as well. I have 2 boys, and an amazing wife and supportive family. And what we've chosen to do, of course, there's basketball and baseball and those things, but we've chosen to pick, sadly, the expensive sports, but like things like skiing and golf. And my reason for that is, as they get older in life, you know, if I say to them like, hey, let's go to the bar for 5 hours, like that's not going to happen. But if I say, let's go play golf, well, that's an event. Or let's go skiing, so like we're trying to do some of those things. We really enjoy traveling and that type of stuff. So you know, I think that's critical to me.
Well, unless my kids make it to the NBA, we'll all end up at the bar in my family. That's all everybody does is play basketball.
And that's the good stuff though, isn't it? Because look, like you said, whether you get up at 2:15 or 7 a.m., work is here. It's gonna be here. So like if you're privileged enough to get away or do some of the things that I just mentioned, like take advantage of those and try to like live in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. Bonus question. Describe where you thought you wanted to, this is from another guest, by the way, just for context. Describe where you thought you wanted to be when you first started out in your career. Compare and contrast that to where you are now. Why is it that way?
I'm exactly where I thought I'd be. Exactly. My father was a blue collar landscaper, awesome man, but I always knew that I wanted to be in sales. Literally, I always knew it.
Wow.
And I think early on at Tech Target, I don't know if we all pushed each other because we were all young, you know, we're in our 20s. We're just, I mentioned some of the folks that were with me there, but, and then I was like, I think I could lead, right? You know, I was fortunate to be a captain of a soccer team. I loved that stuff. It wasn't because I was the best player. I was arguably probably the worst player, but some reason the team trusted me. So I think like, I always knew I'd be in sales leadership. I always knew I would be right here. And I don't know that maybe you get that answer all the time. And I'm not saying that arrogantly. I always knew I would be right here. And so, yeah.
That's the first time I asked that question. So that's the first time I got that answer. So there you go.
There you go.
Well, I'm going to ask you now, frankly.
Yeah.
What question would you like for me to ask my next guest?
So I'm not as profound as that one. I was going to talk about sort of what, assuming you're talking to sales leadership, where they feel artificial intelligence and machine learning, not necessarily just ChatGPT, but how is that going to truly evolve the sales role in the next generation? So again, I mentioned when I was in high school, I knew it would be in sales. Let's say Tom Click is out there right now. What is my role going to look like when artificial intelligence changes the way people research, buy, and consume research information, consume information, and then buy their products? Where's the salesperson going to be? I'd be curious. So summarize that and make that your own. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to read back from the transcript a little bit. So I'm going to cheat where they feel artificial intelligence and machine learning will be as they evolve in sales over the next generation. Ultimately, where is artificial intelligence going to fit in that next generation of sales?
Yeah.
Sales leaders.
Yeah. Or maybe rephrase it like, What does the next generation sales role look like with artificial intelligence and machine learning?
Okay,
That's part of it. So maybe something like that.
there you go. What
Yeah.
does the next generation of sales look like with artificial intelligence and machine
Yeah.
learning? Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm not talking about Sales Loft and some of those great technologies that are out
Yeah.
there. Those
No.
guys are great. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about what's coming next. We all know
Mhm.
what's coming next, and we need to watch that.
Personally, I think everybody should listen to my episode with Stephen Messer from Collective Eye, because I think that was a fantastic.
Oh, I'm on it.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
on to that tonight.
all interesting about
Yeah.
his vision for the future and how machine learning and artificial intelligence and large language modeling and all that stuff comes into play. And frankly, what his vision is and what they're building at Collective Eye, which I think is fascinating to say
Oh,
the least.
cool. All right,
Yeah.
I will definitely thank you for the advice. I'll listen to that one indeed.
Yeah, that's a good one. Everybody else that's listening, go back and listen to that. I do not remember which episode it was, but look for Stephen Messer. How can folks reach out to you, Tom, to say thank you, follow up on some questions?
No
Well,
one's asking to me.
You'll be surprised.
Listen, my name is super easy. It's Tom Click. I'm on LinkedIn. Tom Click, T Click at Integrate, Tom Click at Gmail. So super easy name. Reach out anytime, any questions. I love networking. So always, I really appreciate you, Jay, inviting me into this thing. It's always cool to talk. I love telling a Integrate history lesson because I think it's a good one.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you being here with me and with us. Tom
All right,
Click,
man.
SVP of Sales for Integrate. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jay. See ya.
Take care. Goodbye, everybody. You and the music.